I don't know why, but he just loves climbing on my lap when I turn the camera on. Don't you, buddy? Yeah. What we're going to look at is this guy. This is the Warspear, their first knife, the WP500. Don't know why they started with the number 500, but I've reviewed, I think it was the 501 or was it the 502? I forget the number exactly. These are Micarta. This one, it claims to be 14C28N, liner lock knife. And, you know, it's a fairly long knife. Let's get a little closer. Maybe you can take a look at that. There you go. You got that weird pivot collar insert on that side. Now it's focused back here again. There you go. And this side, yeah, we've got a deep pocket clip and that long pointy blade. If you're interested in seeing this review, stick around. It's coming in just a few seconds after this one commercial break in my video. I'm going to show you later on in the video how to make that pivot collar a different color and how to get a lanyard hole in the knife. Those things didn't come from the factory. And I also try to fix the detent on this knife. Keep watching. If you saw the original unboxing, you know that it comes with a T8 and a T6 little flag driver. You get a second pocket clip, a black one, and you get a second pivot collar. Also, you know, micarta, just like that green pivot collar in there. I don't like those. I talked about it when I did the video of the 502, WP500T. These drivers are not great quality. They're okay. So don't just throw these out when you get them, but don't trust them too much either. And you also get there's what, 4 screws in here. So a long screw and 3 other screws. And you need longer screws here for the pocket clip, and then the shorter screws are the body screws. Let's do a size comparison with the Ontario Rat 1. If we line it up like this with the pivot screws, you've got a knife. This is actually a little bit longer than the Rat 1. Of course, you get a longer cutting edge as well, but you've got a slimmer knife, and the thickness is actually a tiny bit thicker than the Rat. But being short like this and being rounded, it's actually very comfortable in hand. What we got is a drop point blade. There's an odd swedge here that starts partway down the blade and ends before the tip. So you've got that. And we've got a flat grind. So it's a saber grind that doesn't come to the spine, so it's a flat. You don't have a lot of transition distance here, but you do further up here. It's an okay blade for doing basic ODYSEE stuff. It works for puncturing if you need to, and it's an okay slicer. Thankfully, it's nice and thin behind the grind, which really helps it an awful lot. It was pretty poorly sharpened, and I'll talk about the actual specs of how it was sharpened a little bit later on. We've got a big sharpener's choil here. It's not a forward choil. It's not big enough for you to get your finger in there, at least not safely. And but the sharpener's choil comes forward enough that it's easy to sharpen right to the end without getting into the plunge. So that's a good thing. And the plunge comes back just the same way that the handle is coming back. So a decent plunge on there. All the writing on the knife, we have small 14C28N right up there, which I really like. That's the perfect size. It's legible, but so it's not too small, but it doesn't need to be any bigger. On this side, you've got the Warspear logo. I like that it's on the flat. It's just a little bit too big and too dark. I would prefer it to be a little bit, maybe not quite as dark and maybe a little bit smaller. But I've seen a whole lot of knives that are a whole lot worse, so I'm not taking a lot of points off for that. We've got that satin grind with the vertical sanding lines on every section, the flat, the bevel, the swedge. They've all got that same angle of lines on it. So that's that. Next is the action. It's got a flipper. Check out this flipper. I think they don't know how a flipper is supposed to work. The jimping is on this angle that goes exactly the wrong way. because that's as if you wanted to push in that direction. You know, this jimping makes it look like you want to push that way. How's that going to do anything? Because you got to push that way to open this knife. So you can use light switch method, works just fine. We've got real good steel ball bearings in there. Or just on a slight angle, that works as well. But yeah, that jimping is just downright dumb. It's like like I said, they don't understand what the jimping does. They've seen jimping on, you know, flippers and stuff from other companies, and they go, okay, we should put that on there because the other knives have that. But they haven't got a hot clue. If they would have simply flipped that around and had the angle go this way and put jimping on it, then it would be perfect jimping. Right now, it's just really odd. Talking about the knife itself, the pivot, you know, it's not a free spinning pivot. It is a fully round tube through there. T8 screw here, just a typical button screw, you know, and it sinks in, and so it looks odd because it creates, you know, an edge inside there that can gather lint and dust and junk. This one, the hex shape here, it fits in that hole better than the other knife that I reviewed. So I like that it's not just kinked and, you know, sort of half turned. So that looks okay. But what I would do is I think I would dye this micarta black. I think it would look much better black in there than one of these bright colors. Just use a Sharpie, you know, take it out and just make it, soak it full of ink, make it black. The handle, like I said, it's micarta. It's not polished smooth, but it's fairly smooth. You can see the lines right in here. That's, you know, the edge of a layer right here. So it does have a curve on the handle that helps it to feel comfortable in hand. It's a little bit thick right there. It's what, almost 0.58 of an inch thick right here. So it's a little bit thicker than some knives, but being so narrow this way, it's actually very comfortable in hand. We've got a forward choil, that's sort of an extended thing. The lock arm has a chamfer on the edge of it there, and it's cut away a little bit further here. It's very easy to be sure that you're getting your thumb in there to disengage the lock whenever you want to. So it works really well. Hitting the table. Right or left-handed, works just fine. A little bit slower in the left hand. So that's good. I like how that's done. Lockup, it's not crazy early, but it's a little bit early. It's good. I like the lockup. No blade play. Actually, there's a tiny bit of side-to-side blade play. I already recorded the part where it was taken apart, so I just didn't snug it up all the way, I guess. Because when I had it, there we go. It had no blade play when I was, did the first part of the video, did all my testing. And yeah, see that? It can be snugged up enough to have no blade play and still have good action. And, it wants to close really well. It's really smooth. They hit on something quite good. So that's good. The detent on it, it's a very soft detent. You can do the wrist flick thing to make the knife deploy. So I will try to fix that, and I'll mention if I can get the detent working properly at the end of the video. So the handle's comfortable. The pocket clips, yeah, okay. There it goes. It usually goes to the full depth. With those button screws there, sometimes on some of my pants it gets caught up right there, and then I get lint. It gets caught on that screw quite often. But much of the time it goes in all the way. It looks okay. Just a little bit of the knife sticking out of the pocket. Not bad at all. If they would have made this radius here where it folds over just a little bit larger so that that clip would be standing off just a tiny bit further, maybe in just a millimeter, then it would always sink to the bottom of my pockets. The spring tension's not that strong on here, so it's going to be easy to fold this and break the pocket clip, I believe. I'm not going to try to break the pocket clip because I don't want a broken pocket clip. So there you go. The Micarta is comfortable in hand. It's a little bit slicker than, I really like Micarta to be. And because of that, I wish there was some jimping. The spine of the blade here does have the edge broken. It's chamfered, but there's no jimping anywhere. And so it's a little easy to, I'd like to have just a little bit more control that the jimping would offer. The pocket clip does not create a hot spot in hand, either left or right-handed, so I don't mind it that way. So now it's time to take the knife apart and show you the insides. So here it is taken apart. So you can see a load of skeletonizing in there. This has got one of the largest stop pins that I've seen in a long time, especially on a knife of this price. And it just sits in, the holes here on the liners to hold it in place. One odd thing, see there's 3 holes back here? Well, there's 2 holes for screws. And I think they were thinking about making a lanyard hole in this knife, and you still can. There is a little bit of a hole drilled in this already. This is probably Micarta. It looks more like Micarta than G10, this black stuff. But you could line it up, using those pins. Whoops, not that way. First, drill a hole through the Micarta here. Then put this in place. Maybe clamp it on something. And then follow it through that way. It's going to get in the way. You have to take the pocket clip off. So you could still tie something through there. It would come in very close to the pocket clip. But if you want a lanyard, you could do that. So, especially since it's all the way through the steel already, it's not that hard to drill through this other material. Of course, the pivot pin can't spin because of the shape there, so you got a full round pivot rod there. There's a fair bit of Loctite in there, so it was a little bit challenging to get the screw out, but it's T8, so no slips there. And these other screws, I had no problem with these other screws coming out, and there's no Loctite on those or any other challenges that way. So that's how it's made. Oh, by the way, steel ball bearings. There's 10 in there on each side, and they're decent size. So construction, not bad at all. It's that part of the video now where we go over all the sizes, dimensions, and all that information. How much does it weigh? 100 grams on the nose, 3.55 ounces, so that's not bad. The factory sharpness, 185 bests. It did not cut very well at all. And that's because of the grind angles. I'll tell you about that in a little while. Because it didn't cut very well at all, I did sharpen it myself and tried it then, and then it cut very well. So if you know how to sharpen knives, and hopefully you do, and if you don't, you need to put that next on your list of things to do, is learn sharpening, maybe even buy some sharpening equipment. I will order some more sharpening equipment. There's a new, well, not terribly new, but WorkSharp has got a guided sharpening system with a clamp. I'll be getting one of those to test and see how good that is as well. But I really like the higher end sharpening equipment. Hapstone, TS Prof, that kind of stuff is what I really like. So the cutting edge length, 96.5 millimeters, 3.8 inches. Blade length, tip to the closest spot on the handle, 97.8 millimeters, 3.85 inches. So yeah, she's a big, long blade. The thickness of the handle, 3.18 millimeters, exactly 1/8 of an inch. The depth of the blade, 23.8 millimeters, 0.94 of an inch. The thickness behind the grind, I measured it in a couple places. It averaged to 0.46 millimeters, 18 thousandths of an inch. I quite like that. The grind angles. Well, on this side, the average is 25.5 degrees, but it started at 30.1, ends at 20.9. Well, not right at the tip, a bit before. Right at the tip, it's even worse. And this side averaged 29.9, so we got 25.5 and 29.9. This side started at 26.5 and ended at 33.4. So yeah, they did not do a good job sharpening. And that's why I resharpened it. I'll talk just a little bit more. I've got a question about that I'm going to add in this video that I want you to answer. But first, the handle length, 122.4 millimeters, 4.82 of an inch. So just under 5 inches, just under 4 inches, good ratios. The grip area, it's just over 10 centimeters, around 4 inches. The thickness of the handle, remember it's radius, so right down the middle on the micarta, it's 14.7 millimeters, 0.579 of an inch, but it's not bad. It feels quite good. It's not too thick. And again, it's because this depth of the handle isn't that much. The depth of the handle within the grip area, it's biggest right there, 22.7 millimeters, 0.89 of an inch. When the knife is closed, the widest point is up here at the flipper, 30.1 millimeters, 1.18 inches. The total length of this knife from tip to the end of the handle is 220.2 millimeters, 8.67 inches. Usually at this point, I talk about the price of the knife. AliExpress has this for $29.79 American. They do ship to Canada, $39.39 Canadian for this knife. So that's good. It won't pass inspection at Canada's border though, so it might go by uninspected, but if it gets inspected, it will not pass inspection with how loose that pivot is, how soft it is. But first, let me summarize the rest of my thoughts on this. Will you need to sharpen it? Yes, you will. Other than that, it's okay. This ugly thing in here, I think, changing that to black would be just fine. I think I'm actually going to do that on one of these. I'll show you a picture. I'll include the picture right now. Do you think that looks better? I think it probably does. You can change the lanyard thing yourself without too much trouble, so there's that opportunity. It's a comfortable knife. It's highly skeletonized. It feels okay in the hand, although I'd like a little bit more jimping. Nice big stop pin. I really like that. The action is very smooth and no blade play. Lockup is good. The pocket clip is reasonable. It's basically, I'd like a little bit of jimping, detent, and maybe the pocket clip, but those are not big, terrible things except for the detent. Okay, so what did I want to talk about sharpening? Those of you who've watched the video so far, you're the guys I really want to ask the question to, and gals. Should I sharpen all of my knives before I do my testing or while I do my testing? That way they would all have the same kind of edge, and then I'd be really comparing the knife, against a consistent standard instead of against the factory, however poor or good they did a job at the factory. Because although I heard from somebody just today, their father throws away knives when they get dull and he just buys a new one. I just don't understand that, because if it's got a bad edge from the factory, you've just wasted, everything about that knife. But if you can sharpen it well, you can turn what the factory did a bad job of into a very good thing, and then the knife can be a very good cutter for a very long time, just doing your maintenance of that edge. So I will always measure the grind angles from the factory. I'll measure the sharpness from the factory. But do you think I should sharpen these knives before I do finish all of my testing? I'll do some testing, with the factory edge, and then some testing with the sharpened edge. So the question is, should I do that all the time? It's going to make more work for me, that's for sure. But I want to hear your opinions. Don't just say yes or no, please. Tell me why you want me to do or not do. Also, the lanyard hole works. I just took a drill bit, had it apart, drilled through the micarta, from the liner side out, screwed it together with the pocket clip off, and then drilled all the way through. And there you go. You've got a lanyard option. I also got the detent sort of fixed. The hole on the blade didn't line up with the detent ball, and that's why it was not getting a solid engagement. Now it's got a solid engagement. It's not going to open at all, no matter how hard I flick. But I made that detent hole a little bit too big, so now there's room for play. So the detent ball is in the hole, and the blade can play like this. So this is not a safe knife because now the tip is accessible by your hand can touch that tip sticking out. What I could do is take some of this blade off at the tip, make it come down as a more of a drop point so the tip is further down this way. That would make it safe. I can't do anything else on the detent. So yeah, you can fix it, but you got to be really careful. I went back and I re-drilled that tiny bit hole just to make it a tiny bit bigger 5 times. And it wasn't working. And then on the 5th time, there's just a tiny bit of play, which translates over that distance to, you know, a movement of about 1/8 of an inch. So the tip comes out. So no, this is not a knife I'm going to be selling unless somebody wants it with all those defects, you know, with that tip danger right there. But you can make the lanyard hole if you want to. You can change the color of the ring on there if you want to. Here's the WP502, and it's in green. You can also get it in this tan color, so easy to fix that. This one doesn't have any issues with that detent being soft. The detent's dialed in, not perfectly, but it's a pretty good detent. And on this one, they got the jimping right. You know, it's on the right angle, totally opposite here. So, you know, maybe the WP500 is not a knife you can get or want, but this one's okay. And this one's got a lanyard pin back here. So Warspear, am I going to keep trying their knives out? I think I will. I'll check out some more of their knives and see what I think after checking out more of it. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.